Welcome to the Prime podcast, where we explore how leading companies bring ideas to market at warp speed. I'm Lydia Hawthorn, a managing consultant here at Cprime, and I'm bringing you insights from pioneers in tech, product, and new ways of working. We'll uncover the tools and mindsets allowing top organizations to quickly ideate, design, and deliver. Expect tactics on empowering nimble teams, accelerating innovation, and excelling in adaptability. If you want fresh perspectives on executing efficiently, this is the place.
Welcome to the first episode of the Prime Pod, brought to you by Cprime. We are a specialist agile transformation tech and tooling consultancy. We operate globally across all vertical markets. I'm joined today by our global CEO, Zubin Irani. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
The theme of today is the 3 agile rivers, where tech, tooling and transformation meet. And it's all inspired really by a blog post that you posted on our social medias a few months ago. And so I'm really looking forward to getting into it today with you. We're going to go through some questions that are specific to the theme, and then we're going to cover off the big 4 Cprime questions that we ask every guest.
Fantastic.
So maybe you could just tell us about how you found yourself here today and a little bit about you.
Oh, my Cprime journey. Well, it started almost 17, 18 years ago. I founded Cprime with my business partner, Chris Holbrook. And we were both in Silicon Valley. We started, he wanted to change the world of how software gets built. And we had a kind of big, audacious, hairy, audacious goal back then. I think we were a couple of young dreamers. And so we went on this mission, and the journey took us from project management to Agile as the best way to build software. And from there, you kind of get into the technology and the tools of how do software teams collaborate, to the DevOps, and how do you automate and bring efficiency, and that kind of then takes you to modern day kind of scaled Agile. How do you think about from a portfolio level all the way down to engineers, like how do you actually take ideas and business needs and turn that into value created, and so now here we are on this fast forward 16 17 years, and we are 850 people strong, serving global clients across multiple offices, and we're delivering work in about 30 different countries right now. So
yeah, it's been such an exciting year for me being part of the Cprime journey as well.
I think in the modern day world we live in, it's best of breed, which is let's find the best products that service our needs. And that really creates a lot of fragmentation. And so you have a lot of different tools, a lot of duplication of tools where you have, 3 or 4 tools that do the same thing, but they're used by 4 different groups. So you end up with, and that creates a lot of inefficiency. So when I think about tooling and we talk to our clients about it, it's like, how do you pick the right set of best of breed and then use those as standardized platforms, make sure they're integrated and there's automation between those to reduce the amount of, manual entry, duplication of data, and also just having employees when they transfer groups have to learn a whole new set of tools because there's a whole different set of tools being used inside an org. So I think trying to rationalize that down, and then really just once again focusing on more platform friendly tools, which are more open, integrated. I think is a big piece, a big consideration for tooling. And then I think end of the day, like people tend to pick tools and buy software because they want to solve a problem, and I think they lose sight of we are trying to solve a problem, right? We're struggling with X, and therefore we need to go out and get a tool. And I think that's generally that's the normal organization muscles of we have a problem here. Our developers are having a hard time with their code. Let's go buy a source code management tool. That doesn't solve the problem, right? So that's really where I think the bringing together the process and the tooling capabilities to say, how are we going to solve this problem of we're not, managing our code well. You really have to look at it both ways. And I think that's the other piece that's, I think, equally, if not more important than the tool you choose, it's how you implement it. And to be honest, that's a lot of we talk about bringing, tooling and process together. That's a big piece that I would say that most companies really forget. They just think about bring me the tool, set it up, implement it, train my folks, and then move on. And it's like, well, no, it's actually how are they going to work and interact with the tool, and how do you set the tool up to work with the process you're trying to help you accomplish your goals. That I think is, a fundamental, I guess, piece of advice I would have.
Yeah. And certainly on the clients that I've worked on, the most impactful engagements have been where all of those things have been considered together in one view, that none of those things are truly creating impactful, sustainable change unless the whole piece has been considered. And yeah, it's really exciting for me when I'm getting to do all of those things for clients. I just feel like we're able to bring more impact, more true transformation
Exactly.
and value. So I think it'd be really easy for us to talk about everything to do with what we deliver to the client and how the client benefits from working with us. But I, for one, am really impressed always by Cprime's own growth mindset, by how committed we are to relentless improvement. And I think it'd be really interesting to hear from you about maybe the last time there was a need for our teams to transform, what the catalyst was for that.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that the need for relentless improvement, I think, is something that is in our roots, and I think it's fundamental for any business at this day and age to survive. Is you have to keep growing. If you're not growing, you will die. And I think most companies are seeing that. So our roots of why it's important to focus on growth is, one of a desire to continue to evolve. And I think as individuals, we should always be learning. I think you keep learning and growing as an individual pretty much your whole life. And which is why I believe in active retirement as opposed to retirement is you got to keep your brain moving. Otherwise you stop growing.
Sure.
And there's actually lots of studies on the decline, the rapid decline of people once they retire. So I do believe both as individuals and as companies, we have to have that mindset. As a consulting, organization, we have to continue to evolve ourselves as we support our clients and help them where they need to go, which, that's also evolving. So if we are stagnant and static, we can't support them. In terms of, how we have institutionalized that mindset, I think one is it's a core value, right? Always be learning is one of our core values. So make sure that's clear. Really be investing heavy in professional development, not just saying we have programs, but making sure people follow through on those programs. And it's a number of other, kind of constantly making sure that we are looking ahead and we are seeing our opportunities or our gaps and saying, here's where we need to go, and should also building that into our annual strategic plans so we can both, be very, very deliberate about our kind of growth.
Sure. And when we're looking into some of the big transformations that we've undertaken as a business, what triggered the last one? What was the last time that you, as a senior leadership team, sat down all together and said, now's the time?
Well, yeah. So you have, obviously we, last year we were acquired by Goldman Sachs and Everstone private equity. So that is probably the last biggest transformation event. And, the big change there is saying, really the charter we've been given is how do you grow your business in the next 4 to 5 years? How do you triple your business and run at a global scale and run that efficiently? So through that, we've, put together some, transformation initiatives, put out a roadmap, put out a change management plan, and we're executing against that and communicating with our company every month in our town halls. What are we doing? How's it going? What's working? What's not? To, help, kind of be transparent about the change that's coming. Why is it coming? How is it impacting? And also getting feedback from the field to make sure we're adjusting based on the pace of the change so that we're not, over or under performing on that. So that's probably the biggest transformation we've kind of gone through recently.
Yeah. I think it's such a valid point as well, because I think the worst thing that a plan can be is to be devoid of the narrative, the voices of the people who are responsible for it, who are doing the work towards it. And so, that communication piece, the visibility, the transparency, time and time again, it comes up as the differentiator really for making it land.
I think that's a big one. Right? And it's, it's funny, in Agile, we talk so much about one of the big tenets of Agile is the whole, collaboration, right? Involve the team, right? And it's just because the team's now bought into, this is why I'm building this feature, right? And I think one of the things we've done with our transformation is really include our team and some are not only leadership but also next level managers into, hey, we're trying to solve this problem, we're trying to become like this, here's what we have now that doesn't work for the future, let's come up with a model for the future and let's figure out a plan to get there. So I think very much in not only voicing the why but in involving a lot of folks on the how, and then getting feedback from their teams as well, in the field, and as we go kind of incrementally, you iterate through that evolution and then implementation. So
and talking about teams and reflecting on the sort of situations that we often find ourselves entering into when we engage with clients is teams that are good. They're good teams. They're conscientious. They work hard. They're well-meaning. They have integrity, drive, but they're not great. And I think it would be really interesting to hear your perspective on what is the differentiator between good teams and great teams, in your opinion.
Ooh, yeah, that's a tough one. I think the biggest, I say the biggest differentiator when you look at a good team versus a great team is a great team has really figured out how they have built that level of trust and rapport with each other that they can push each other to be better, and they're accountable to each other. I think good teams will do what's necessary and will follow the practices and will collaborate and they'll get work done. Great teams have this call it internal culture or nature about them where they are striving to be the best. They're striving to produce high quality work because they're told to or they're bonus to, but because they take pride in the work that they build. And they have also built the relationships with each other in those teams that they can have open and honest conversations and say, like, look, this isn't working, or something's not working here, or even giving tough feedback sometimes to say, look, this is not right. And then more importantly, like, how do we work through that, right? And so I think, like in any relationship, it's all about people say it's communication, but what does communication really mean? Mm-hmm. It's ability to articulate, ability to earn trust, ability to kind of have those tough conversations, and then still go out for a beer afterwards.
Yeah.
And it's all in the progress of, hey, we are all trying to get better, and we may have different views on how we do that, but if we don't talk through that openly, we can't come to a agreement on what the right path is. And sometimes it's like, hey, we may not still agree, but we're going to go down your path, because at the end of the day, it's all about execution that's going to get us to the results.
Yeah.
And sometimes both answers are right, so just pick one and do it.
Yeah, and I found that our approach at Cprime to consultancy, number one, has a lot of integrity behind it. And number two is never focused on long-term being the people stewarding somebody's transformation or stewarding their strategy around tech or tooling. It's always focused on what can we give you to equip yourselves to do that. And having been in-house myself, done the other side, been on the other side essentially of the desk, and working with consultancies, is that quite often that wasn't always the focus. It was, what are we going to do for you now, and not really touching on the long term. So I suppose, to your point, teams that are considering what is best, utilitarianism, really, like what is the greatest good for the greatest number.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is. I mean, you're right. Our approach has always been to enable, right? We enable organizations and we help them build, like a personal trainer. We help them build muscles so that they can then go work out by themselves and sustain that for the rest of their lives, right? A personal trainer doesn't want to work with you, or shouldn't want to work with you for 20 years. It's, how do I help you get on the right path to better health? How do I teach you how to work out? How do I teach you to, make good choices? Mm-hmm. And so it's a lot of our consulting approaches to, enable organizations and give them those muscles that they may not have, or make them stronger so they can then run on their own.
Yeah. So thinking back to the theme of the episode, the three agile rivers where tech, transformation and tooling converge, where they meet. Could you maybe talk about an example where we've been really successful within a client at bringing those three things together to drive value?
Sure. So one of the clients I think of is one of the large financial institutions we work with, and they had originally brought us in because they wanted to transform their organization and become more agile. And very very early on, we're like, well, what are you doing with the collaboration tools? And they're like, oh, that's another person's handling that. And we're like, well, okay, well, tell us more. like, oh, well, that's given to some other initiative. They're going to do their own thing. And I'm like, but and so that was the start of the discussion. And through those discussions, we got to say, like, actually, these work streams really should be one. Let's bring it together. And so, working through even at the onset of the engagement, say, hey, let's take these work streams and think of them as one unified effort to really make sure we're all working towards the same goal and the same outcomes. And so we're able to take, a pretty, two large initiatives, pull them together so there was really one unified approach to going back to what are we solving for, right? And how do we really helping this organization transform from one where they didn't have visibility, they didn't have predictability, they were struggling. Business was very frustrated that technology could not deliver on, 80% of what they needed to grow their businesses, to really helping that organization transform to, an agile way of working, but also with tools that help the teams collaborate and get closer together and work across multiple geographies and time zones. That's a very important part of tools, right? To cover that, and also bringing in some of the automation as well. And so you went from, the work we did there to a business that was brought in and more engaged because they had transparency now with the teams, and they could actually revise their backlogs. They could see the progress against their roadmaps. And even if things weren't delivered exactly on time, they knew about it because the transparency was there, right? And I think that's the whole, predictability. Over time, you see over, sprints and over quarters, you start seeing, hey, we're getting 80-90% of our work that we plan and we're getting it done. So that gives, your confidence interval on what you deliver, what the business gets is much higher, which really then kind of encourage and really reinforce this trust building between the two groups that typically had a very adversarial relationship. So it was wonderful to see kind of, how, we start out with one little initiative and how you bring those together, how you drove the change with tech, and then ultimately the business started really collaborating at a much closer level, and the tension, the high tension that existed became much more kind of collaborative and cordial around, okay, let's plan this right. We have the flexibility we want, we have the transparency we want. You're producing good value for us, and we see that your folks are working hard. And we're going to stop calling the CEO and complaining about technology. So that's one of the success stories that I think of, which really does bring kind of both the agile side, the tech, and then how that transformation works.
Yeah, and so much of that can also be enabling people to have difficult conversations in a way that is not toxic, it doesn't create tension, it's not jarring. It doesn't mean that the difficult conversation shouldn't happen, because in actual fact, that's what gives you the high quality product. That's what makes the end result exceptional, exactly. Is because people have challenged and people have fought for better. But giving them an arena or a mechanism within which to have those conversations that doesn't then divide them is just so vital, I think.
Yeah, and I think that's agile, that's one of the bigger things. It just gives you the ability to be honest about your failures, because you're saying, look, we learned through our failures, right? And then the other piece, even when you get into the tech teams around estimations, one of the core principles of any kind of estimations is you actually want to look at the variances in estimates. So when some of your team thinks it's going to take 40 days, another part of the team thinks it's going to take 5, you're like, great, we've got a variance. Let's understand what assumptions you use to come up with that variance. Like, variances are actually such a wonderful thing. I know in the world we live in now, variances are very negative, right? You have polarizing opinions, and I actually think polarizing opinions are great if you can say, let's deconstruct that. Let's understand how you came to that, and here's how I came to what I came to. And let's talk through. We actually have a lot more in common than we think. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the piece around the collaboration and the friction, where you can turn that to a healthy friction. And I think Agile gives you a framework to say, it is safe to be honest about what can be done. It is safe to be honest about where we're struggling and how we're going to deal with that, because then only we can get better. Mm-hmm. And it's, if you can't admit, once again, it's you can't learn if you don't admit you have problems and things aren't working. So
sure.
You're right, very much so, I think. And I think organizations historically have had such a adversarial, connection with various groups that they are fearful. And I think Agile, if done right, allows that fear to turn into, or that conflict to turn into constructive, activity. So.
And I think anybody operating in our space, needs to have that natural curiosity of what is behind the anti-pattern. So to your point, estimations having a lot of variance. Okay, is that because there is lack of clarity in the scope? Is it because there isn't a shared understanding? We're not using a shared language around things? Is it because there really is a real difference in capability between some team members?
Absolutely.
And the diagnosis, really, the root cause, can be very different. And if you don't get curious, you just take it on face value that, quote unquote, teams aren't good at estimating.
Right.
And actually the solutions to either of those diagnoses are very different. And the way that you go about it is different. So yeah, I think that natural curiosity is the thing to follow.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well said.
Okay, that was a really, really great example. Thank you. So the next section is the same 4 questions that we're going to be asking every single guest, the Cprime Big Four. And the first one really is, to your point before, we don't have failures, we have lessons learned. But what would you say has been your biggest fail?
Without giving a specific example, I would say it's been in the hiring side, right?
Okay.
So my belief around hiring or even about culture of a company, and it's every person you hire into a company changes your culture, either positively or negatively. The higher you go in terms of if that person's managing a team, if they're managing multiple teams, they're managing an organization, a division, the bigger the impact of the culture, right? So specifically in my role as CEO, if I hire a direct report, a new executive, or any senior executive or director that we bring into the company, has a profound impact on our culture. So I think back over the years, the biggest failure is bringing in the wrong person, not being able to figure out this person wouldn't fit, but then also how long did it take me to figure out and then fix it, right? Then the negative repercussions can take months and sometimes years to fix, and even now it is people will still refer back, especially long-time Cprimes will refer back to many, many years ago when I hired this one person that really had such a negative impact in the organization, and even 10 years later, you still hear that example because it was such a big impact. And so, and once again, even the specific example I think of that we spent 6 months interviewing that person and still totally wrong fit.
Yeah.
And so I think that to me, it's about people. And I think, that's probably my biggest failure is the hiring of, and then how quickly I could remedy that.
Yeah. And it was interesting. I was talking earlier with somebody about the sort of the nuance between working in a consultancy where your primary role, unless you are sort of in the functional side of things like ops or finance, your primary role is to be client facing.
Mm-hmm.
And the difference that has on how you operate versus working in-house. And having done both myself, the skill sets that I lean on are very different.
Yeah.
And I don't think when people start out their careers or they make that move, if they've done one before but not the other, they consciously think, when you're picking what to do for your job, you don't think, do I want to be client facing or not? Because it's not really a concept. It's,
right.
You kind of think about your discipline. But actually the types of people or the types of approaches that fit a consultancy organization, I think, are fairly unique. And sometimes the pressures of being client facing aren't for everybody. And equally, some people really rise to the occasion. So yeah, I don't think it's surprising that it can be tricky to get it right every time. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So, okay, we talked about your biggest fail, but let's talk about the positives. So what would you say has been your biggest win?
I think our biggest win, there's probably 2 or 3 inflection points the company has had with our evolution. And I think of those 2 or 3 inflection points as like things we got right. We, and one example is, in the early days, we really much started out as a project management company, and very quickly we saw, hey, the Agile, framework or methodology is very much, or the Agile practices are very much like what our best project managers are doing by default. And we said, you know what, we're trying to change the world of how software gets built. PMP and the old school way of building projects isn't working. It's not a good, you're set up for failure. Right, you go build this 500-point project plan on day one. It's out of date, right? It's out of sync. It's not going to work. And so we pivoted very much into said we want to become an agile consulting business because that's where we believe the market should go. We wanted to lead that way, and we did that back in 2009. Made that decision, and that was a pretty massive inflection point that we then poured a lot of. It was a pretty big bet for us, and then subsequently in 2012 we did the same thing with the Atlassian space, saying, look, we really think tooling and collaboration tools is a big part of supporting agile transformations, and there was no one out there that was doing it. There were all the Atlassian partners were just tech companies. They didn't understand agile, and we said, no, we want to really understand how we could take something like Jira and apply it to agile teams and bridge that gap. And we became wildly successful for that. It's not about us being successful. It's about, it was a problem the market really had. It was an opportunity we saw, and we really took advantage of that. And to take advantage of it, it's quite complex, right? To move a business, to bring in a new capability, to be able to join that with another capability and serve our clients, and then do that at scale in a short amount of time is pretty dramatic. So I think when I think of wins, like those are pretty transformational times that required a lot of people to shift how we were working and what we're doing and respond to the market needs and opportunities in front of us. So I think those are kind of two of the big inflection points I think of. And there's a handful more, but I'll just give you those two.
Sure. And I think like nailing that ability to present a holistic solution to the client is one thing that I hadn't seen many other consultancies do at scale without being one of the big four,
Right.
And I think that our clients certainly have fed back to me anyway that they find it a very well positioned offering in that our capabilities are very high across a number of different spaces, but that our approach still feels bespoke. It still feels tailored to them, almost like a boutique consultancy would. And I guess you'll put to your points, that speaks volumes to where we find ourselves now in the present day. Okay, so the next question, and our mission at Cprime, right, is to bring ideas into action faster.
Yeah, I think the one of the many people that come to mind is a guy by the name of Stedman. And he's taken on a number of different roles for us over the years. And, he started out in finance, went into sales, did operations, did a little M&A, and then now he's running our North American delivery teams. And, the thing about Stedman is we can have a conversation around, we really need to solve this. And he can take that concept and then go figure it all out. Not by himself, but pulling people together, coming up with a point of view and then executing and transforming, whatever that problem needed to be. And it's the ability to do that, and then also kind of circle back and make sure along the way that it's addressing what, kind of the concept we had talked about, right? So I think having that, trust and reliability to be like, hey, here's a problem or idea, I need someone to go figure it out. I'd say that's a big one. And, Stedman definitely embodies that and has, in the numerous roles he's played for us. And that's probably why he's played numerous roles, because he has that ability to take, an idea or a problem and turn that into results.
Yeah. And I think if we put it in a context that might apply to people who are watching this that are in a client setting, the sorts of companies we would go and consult with, really what we're talking about is somebody who is very good at closing that feedback loop, is making sure that once something has begun being built, there is constantly signposted opportunities for people to give feedback, to ensure that it's still hitting the requirements, that it is fit for purpose, that it's going to deliver the value that's expected. And half of that is bringing people on the journey, right?
Yeah.
As much as it is about their ability to problem solve.
Because bringing people on the journey is helping with change. I think your summary is a great example.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And Stedman is definitely all of those things. So on a similar theme, but that can be work or non-work related, what is something that you wish you could see turn into action faster, an idea?
Every day I think about this on my way to the office or even on the way to this recording studio. This is more of a personal thing than anything, but I think if we could synchronize traffic lights in a much better way, I think we would have less traffic. It means we would have happier people. we would all have some time back because we wouldn't be sitting at red lights or sitting behind traffic, and would also hopefully reduce our carbon footprint. So, something for everyone, right?
Ticks all the boxes.
Exactly. Keeps capitalists happy because they get time back when time is money, and keeps environmentalists happy because we're reducing the carbon footprint. So, and burn less gas.
And what would you do with all the spare time that you then had?
Hopefully spend it with my family, my kids.
Right answer.
Right
answer. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for your time today, Zubin. It's been lovely getting to hear from you all about the amazing things that Cprime do and a little bit about your backstory as well. And for everybody tuning in, thank you so much for watching. There will be another episode coming next month with Carrie Knott, who is the ex-head of customer transformation at British Airways. Thank you so much, and we hope to see you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of our podcast. If you enjoyed our conversation today, we'd love for you to help more people discover the show by leaving a review and rating. Your feedback really makes a difference. Also, don't be shy about spreading the word on social media. Feel free to share a screenshot of this episode and tag @Cprime Inc. on LinkedIn so others can get in on the action. For more information, head over to cprime.com to access a treasure trove of resources to enhance your knowledge. Stay tuned for more insightful episodes as we dive deeper into the ever-changing world of product, technology, and ways of working with the experts at Cprime and beyond. Stay curious out there, and catch you on the next episode.